Can you believe it? Pitchers and catchers report in just a few days. Sandy, Andrew, and I are back for the Dealing Cards podcast, and we're going to talk about our spring training preview, storylines that we're looking out for, things we're keeping our eyes on as camp enters, and we'll even recap a few small moves that happened since the last time we talked. Yes, the Cardinals finally did some stuff. We'll talk about all of this and more in this episode of Dealing the Cards. Hey, welcome back into Dealing the Cards. I'm Josh, joined by Sandy and Andrew as usual. Not always. Sometimes we're out, but we're Dealing Cards podcast presented by 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. We'll give you some more information on them later, but they're an awesome presenter of the podcast. We're St. Louis Cardinals podcast that goes live twice a week here on the YouTube channel, as well as Birds on the Farm and other stuff as well. And we're always talking Cardinal baseball, and it's been the slowest off season of all. Well, it's been the fastest off season. Like, I feel like it feels like yesterday the World Series ended, but in the same way, it's been slow, as in like nothing's happened. So it's been boring. But here we are, spring training. The next time we'll record, camp have already begun. So we are going to preview spring training today.
Maybe something will happen before then.
You saying another pandemic's going to happen or something? That's going
to shut down maybe like someone will get traded.
Oh, that's true. Okay. Unless a certain somebody gets traded, we will not be talking again until camp starts, which is 2 days from now. So this is awesome. I'm so excited for spring training becoming. Again, I know, like, if we could do podcasts every single day and just complain and get mad about what's happened this offseason. I'm sure that'll be within our conversation. It's been in our conversation. Sometimes people add us and be like, you guys never do anything. Like, did you listen to the podcast all offseason? Because we like constantly complained. But I mean, today's a day where we're going to look at storylines, and some of these are going to be kind of positive. And it doesn't necessarily mean this is what we wanted to happen, but like now this is the reality of the team. And so we're going to look at what's the best case scenario, or the things that we're keeping an eye on. And so I'm excited to talk about some storylines today with that. The Cardinals did make a couple small moves over the weekend, which I think are interesting and could play into some of our storylines. They traded for, oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name right now, the utility guy from the Twins. But you know who I'm talking about, and I'm going to figure out his name here in a second. That just shows you Matthew Harmon or something like that. Oh, you're muted, Sandy.
He is very muted.
But
Michael Hellman.
Michael Hellman. Yeah, I'm like Michael. I'm like Mo calling him Sinisi right now. I can't remember his name. And then they're obviously our Nick Anderson signing, and Rob Kaminsky is back for the third time. So some veteran bullpen arms and a utility man right there. None of them are necessarily groundbreaking things, but you know, every team makes depth signings. And I don't think people would be complaining about these signings if it wasn't for the fact that they didn't do anything this offseason. Like, every team makes small moves like this. So I don't like when people complain about it, like some people are like, oh, what do they need? A left-handed reliever? It's like, okay, every team makes these kind of signings. It's fine. It's the fact that they didn't do the other stuff that makes people mad, but which we understand. Anyways, Andrew, I'm gonna put you on the spot, man. What's one storyline? We're just gonna jump into it. What's one storyline that you're keeping an eye on as we enter camp right now?
One thing that I think I'm looking at most is just the rotation and how that's going to shake out.
Yeah.
There's guys that need opportunities, and we've talked about that at length. But if everybody's healthy, which tends to not be the case, but if that is the case, then you're going to break camp with the rotation of 4 veterans and Andre Palante, and that's not great. There's guys that, like Michael McGreevy, needs to be in that rotation. If he's not, it's going to be really bad. 6-man rotation has been floated out there by some people. I don't think anyone's from the organization has said that would really happen, especially just because that's something that they don't tend to do.
Well, to be fair, if it's being floated, like Gould today was like, if I'm reporting it's because I've heard something. So like, obviously people from within the organization are saying, some sources within the organization are saying it. Obviously they haven't publicly said it, but it's something being talked about.
Yeah. And Graceffo and whoever need just some opportunities to show that they can pitch at the major league level as a starter. And if they can't, then that's fine. You have like 8 other guys that will get those opportunities to pitch. And I'm just wondering and seeing what the team will do if, say, Miles Michaelis is really bad in spring. And I feel like his rotation spot should be earned, even though it probably is given. Steven Matz, if he's going to be healthy and go pole to pole. And then I feel like Fetty and Gray are kind of going to just be in the rotation. It would be really – I think Palante's got to be penciled into the rotation, and then that doesn't leave a lot of spots. So maybe they'll, like, I don't know. We've been hammering that they should trade Eric Fetty all offseason, and they're not going to do it. So there you go. But I feel like that's the one spot where I think there should be a position battle, and there's really not. And I like to see just some more guys get opportunities to pitch and try to start, because it's a youth movement, and Miles Michaelis isn't very young. So, it's time for him to go.
Yeah. Oh, Sandy, what do you think about that 6-man rotation idea? Because it's something that, to Andrew's point, I feel like every other year there's like small talk about, oh, they could consider a 6-man rotation. Even last year before the year started, it was like, hey, to make it work with some of the arms, they might do a 6-man for the first 2, and then they never do it. But to be fair, there are more and more teams starting to actually move toward a 6-man rotation model. Obviously, the Dodgers are the prime example of it, but there are other clubs considering it as well. So it seems like this is different than just the oh, we could do it for a week or two. This is more of like a, hey, we have unique opportunity here to get more arms in the rotation. Do we do that? I did some quick math here. I mean, if you give 6 arms starts over 162 games, that's about 27 starts per guy. So you're not necessarily like penalizing. Like I'd rather, like, again, not all 6 guys will stay healthy, but I'd rather get Michael McGreevy 27 starts, meaning, and not to, if they're not going to take Miles Michael out of the rotation, 27 starts is still a significant number. So 6-man rotation makes sense to me. It does put a strain in your bullpen though. So I'll get more thoughts on that. But like, Sandy, what do you think about the idea of like a 6-man? Oh, you're muted again.
I'm trying to avoid my bad audio feedback. It's terrible, but I don't think it's going to happen, first off, because we've talked about it so many times. They've never done it. And the other thing is, I feel like if you're going to do a 6-man, that's just a soft launch of your real 5-man rotation while keeping guys you don't want in your rotation there and allowing them to just soak up starts. I don't really understand why they would do it. Also, I feel like pitchers are creatures of habit, and I don't know how being in a 6-man rotation would affect someone like that. There's no guarantee that like changing something that big for like an Andre Palante wouldn't have a real effect on him. So I don't like the idea. I don't want the Cardinals to go to a 6-man. I feel like there's a reason we've done 5-man rotations in baseball for a really long time. I'm a fan of that. Also, a 6-man rotation, you're going to lose a spot in your bullpen, which for a team like the Cardinals, where if you have a 6-man rotation, but you have guys that are struggling to get length, like the Cardinals could have this year. Steven Matz, like, not known for pitching into the 7th inning very often. Miles Michaelis gives you a lot of length, but if he's even worse this year, he could be coming out in the 4th inning after giving up multiple runs. Andre Palante showed you that he could get a little bit of length last year, but that was kind of spotty. And there were plenty of times that he came out in the 5th inning. The same goes for Eric Fetty, who came out in the 5th or 6th a couple times with the Cardinals down the stretch. We haven't seen too much from him, but also, again, with the White Sox, it's not like this guy was pitching into the 8th. He's not a bulldog out there. Even Sonny Gray, who probably gives you more length than anybody else in this rotation, the Cardinals never let him go into the 8th. I
mean, he's been 5 or 6 and dive most of the time too. So.
They never let him pitch into the 7th or the 8th. And I love watching guys pitch a long time. I think that's really cool. So I'm always a fan of that. But yeah, I just feel like there's not enough length in this rotation to cut a spot out of your bullpen. And where does that spot come? I mean, the Cardinals, like, are you cutting a lefty out of the pen? Are you cutting one of your righties out? Can the Cardinals live without a long man? And at that point too, I wonder if you have this trouble, because Lance Lynn last year is a great example of a guy that wasn't giving you any length. And so you're having to bring in multi-inning relievers. Could you be in a 6-man and then very quickly it's like, oh, Michael McGreevy, we need a guy who's going to be a long man today. And all of a sudden, like, you're out of the rotation because you're having to fill in every 5 days anyway and help out for somebody. So I'm not a fan of it. I don't want to lose the roster flexibility. I don't want to lose the bullpen spot. Just keep it the way it's been.
I think go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that Miles Michaelis is familiar with 6-man rotations because that's what they have in Japan, and that's where we should send him.
I was about to say maybe we should go back there. I'm interested in the idea of it. Redbird Farmhands, I see he was in the chat. Maybe he would have a good idea. I think some of the affiliates do a 6-man rotation, so I wonder if some of the young arms are kind of used to that. And then also
it's like every week with the same off day on Sunday.
But I'm just saying, like, in terms of if you're going to start moving towards some of these young arms, some of them are at least used to not every 5 days type of thing. And you do have off days during the season, so it's never always that consistent. But it's a good point that it changes rhythms of guys. I'd be interested to see what their philosophy around it looks like. I do think it makes the the Memphis Mafia even more of a thing, or the Memphis Shuttle, I should really say, for the bullpen, because you're going to have to rotate guys a lot more frequently. And in some ways, it actually might make sense in a year like this when you want to see, Like we've talked about Sem Robersa, we've talked about Gordon Graceffo, we've talked about those guys that we want to see get some opportunities at big league level, but we don't want necessarily them to be shoehorned into bullpen roles all the time. That could be the way to do it, where you get some of those guys up there and you give you 2 or 3 innings at a time out of the pen. And they might be frequently back and forth between Memphis and St. Louis, but that's the path toward getting guys opportunities this year on top of a 6-man group. And again, injuries will happen. So whether it's Michaelis, Matz, Fetty, McGreevy, when these guys goes down, you're going to have more rotation opportunities. I'm with you in terms of it's hard to wrap my head around this because it's not really been a thing in baseball. So like the practicality of it's interesting, but if you've got guys in your bullpen that you trust to go multiple innings, you're willing to keep moving guys back to Memphis and bring them back up 15 days later when they're eligible. And you move Roycroft, Leahy, Graceffo, Robersa, Padel, like you just go at all these different names around to make it work. Then I could see it happening. To your point, I think if I had to put a bet on it right now, I would say it probably doesn't happen because we haven't seen anything that points that direction. But it does. The language feels a little bit different this time than past years, where it's felt like, we could do this to like.
Sure.
It feels like this could be a strategy to get opportunity for guys, and then allows them to keep those veteran arms. And if a bunch of the unarms don't work, then nothing's stopping them from going back to a 5-man. And then if all these young arms are producing, then maybe they're more likely to get rid of Michaelis because they're like, hey, like we're running a 6-man group right now. We still have guys that we feel like can get into this rotation. So we could easily go down to a 5-man, have to added depth, get rid of Michaelis or whatever. But yeah, we'll see. I think it's Andrew. So that's one of the best storylines to look at. Is like, how are they going to manage that young rotation or the rotation options? It's an old rotation, but how are they going to manage the young options?
One more thing really quickly too. Like if the Cardinals are committed to having Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, and Andre Palante in this rotation, I think that's actually like a fine top 3. I don't think it's that bad.
Yeah.
I mean, there are plenty of teams with better top 3s, of course, around the league. But like that's arguably better than some of the top 3s the Cardinals put together in the late 2010s when they were in it.
Oh, for sure.
The season, if they're committed to doing that, I don't want those guys pitching less. Like I don't want Sonny Gray pitching once a week when he can pitch every 5 days. Because when Sonny Gray pitches, you have your best chance to win. And I'd like, obviously this year's about seeing what you got. But like the team is good. I think the team's good enough to still like be in the race at some point this year. And if that's the case, like don't shoot yourself in the foot or commit to shooting yourself in the foot and bring up all the guys. Like pick a lane. The 6-man feels like another way for them to straddle the middle and say like, oh, we're giving guys a shot and we're trying to win and we're trying to play our old guys. Like pick one of the two. Don't have Sonny Gray start less to give more guys a shot, but have Michaelis start at all to not give more young guys a shot. Yeah. And by getting rid of Michaelis, that opens up 32 starts for somebody instead of like 5 starts, So
true.
I would not like the move. I think I'd have a lot of problems with it if they went that way.
Yeah, I see what you're saying with this. So it'd be interesting to see what they do, and we'll get into it more and more in depth if it becomes a real option. Let's thank a couple of our sponsors real quick, and then we'll jump into Sandy, maybe you can go next with a storyline you're watching, but we always want to thank 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, our presenting sponsor of the Deal on the Cards podcast. They're located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet, open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards. They have the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars from around the league, like a manager or a minor leaguer Oliver Marmol card. Or if you're into NFL cards, Super Bowl, get a Patrick Mahomes rookie card or something like that. I'm sure that's worth a lot of money at this point. Go collect your cards, Pokemon cards, all those things at 314. Many of you already shop there, so make sure to let them know if you heard about them on the podcast, and let us know when you get stuff from them, because I'm getting back into it. Collecting cards in sports memorabilia is fun. But then we also want to thank our partners over at Underdog Sports. They're our favorite place to play fantasy games. You can play now in Missouri, Illinois, and surrounding states. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats of your favorite players and choose whether to go higher or lower. You can win up to 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, use our promo code CARDS to claim your first free pick, plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We can't wait to see your entries. Again, Super Bowl's tonight, and Underdog's also running another promo that you can do at the same time where you get a no sweat bet. So again, first free pick, but you can also do the pick tonight. And if it doesn't work out, you get the credit back. So it's no penalty to you. I put out one the other day, which I don't feel super confident in. I can't remember what it was. I think I had higher on Saquon yards, higher Saquon yards, higher on Patrick Mahomes rushing attempts, because in the playoffs, he likes to run around a lot. So I like that. and then higher on Kelsey targets because I think they'll really use him tonight. I know Sandy threw one in our chat that's going to get posted here soon too. But go and make sure to check out.
Should I share it now, or should they have to check our Twitter?
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so obviously, like Josh said, the big game pick'em, there's some exciting promos tonight, and this no sweat thing up to $15. So that's great. You can take some more risks, maybe a little bit. So I like the three line over under pick'ems, but today I've gone to 4, and it'll multiply my entry by 9.45 if it hits. So that's very exciting for me. But I've got Harrison Butker making a field goal longer than 45.5 yards.
I like
He's done it a lot of times this year. I really do. Like, unfortunately, I think the Chiefs are going to win tonight, and I think they're going to win it on some Harrison Butker field goal late. So I'm just hedging against that. I've got Xavier Worthy over 5.5 receptions. He's been on a tear this postseason and over the second half of the year. He's emerged as one of Mahomes' favorite targets. So I think he's going to be involved. I've got Saquon Barkley, 53.5 rushing yards in the first half. I'll take the higher on that. I love that. Barkley maybe could have won the MVP this year. He was really fun. Just an electric player. If anyone remembers the reverse hurdle he had earlier this year, like, it's been that kind of year for him. Very exciting. And then I've got Isaiah Pacheco under 11.5 first half rushing yards because I'm not a believer. And it looks like they're moving to Kareem Hunt. And every week it seems that they're more invested in Hunt, less invested in Pacheco. And when Pacheco's gotten carries in recent games, they've come in the second half, like the game against Buffalo. So I don't see him doing much tonight. That's what I've got.
Good stuff. Well, you can download Underdog Fantasy Sports in the link in our bio and use the promo code CARDS again for all that extra bonus cash offers and first free picks. So, Sandy, what's the storyline you're watching as camp starts this week?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how the Cardinals build out this bullpen. And I'm sure that's a predictable answer, but I can't wait for it.
It's really interesting.
I just want to go back to last year when I insisted that John King should be in the bullpen, and I was told that it was ridiculous. Not by you guys, but just by other people around, Cardinals fandom, responding to my tweets, saying that no one should be glazing John King. Well, he earned it. He was worthy of all of it. And now it's not just him, but it's Kyle Leahy, Matthew Liberatore. We're building a whole squad of guys that I really enjoy watching. I think this bullpen is going to be really fun, though. I've got the Cardinals depth chart pulled up right now on Fangraphs, and the projected bullpen has a lot of interesting names here. You've got Ryan Helsley, obviously, Ryan Fernandez and Jojo Romero, mainstays from last year. They emerged as high leverage arms. Helsley was already one of the best relievers in baseball. But then you've got your middle group that I love of John King, Kyle Leahy, Zach Thompson, even Matthew Liberatore, and they've got Gordon Graceffo projected to make the roster. I don't know if he's going to make the opening day roster, but I do think that even though we'd like to see him start, he does profile as an interesting reliever candidate. I can see him emerging as a really good option. And then there's so much depth behind these guys. Kareem and I have talked about it at length on Birds on the Farm, if you want to go check that out. But the Cardinals really do have a wealth of options back there. And hopefully they'll do some stuff like they did last year, where during spring training, early in the season, they go out and they look for these guys that can add something to the pen, the Chris Roycrofts of the world. And every once in a while, some of them are going to hit. Chris Roycroft was awesome. John King was a throw-in at the trade deadline, for Montgomery. He was not the main guy in that package. Sometimes they don't hit, like your Riley O'Brien's, whatever, injury, tough. But hopefully they go out, find some more of those guys that we can be excited to watch. I do think the bullpen is going to be a unit of strength on this team. I think it's going to be really strong. I think it's going to be a position where the Cardinals can win games, hold leads. So I'm very excited to see what it looks like this year.
Yeah, and over the course of the year, you could see guys like just so many, Ryan Ludis, Matt Savanson, Riley O'Brien, Bailey Horn, Nick Anderson, Andre Granillo, Zach Weiss, Packy Naughton. I know he's getting healthy, but by midseason, he might be someone. And then again, the rotation options too of guys who might not make it. But who knows if Cooper Jerpy maybe at some point makes a sneaky bullpen to Tinkens.
I don't know if I'd like that, but
yeah, Ram, Tekoa, Roby, Victor Sant. There's just so many different arms. Rodri Munoz that could factor in at some point. So I agree with you that I'm just really interested to see who emerges from that, right? Because most of those guys probably aren't going to make an impact, or most of those guys might get an opportunity, but they might not stick. They might throw 3 innings, and it's like they're whatever.
It's nice that this will be the first time in last year. I guess they did this too, but these last 2 years, first time forever that the Cardinals don't have a bad old reliever under contract coming into the season.
True. That's a great point.
There's so much open room here.
Who was it last year, Sandy? Who was it? Say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it because he wasn't bad at all during his Cardinals career until last year.
And they had a bad old reliever under contract. So
but he was not that old. That's crazy.
Yeah. Hey, but
not like Greg Holland or Andrew Miller or Luke Gregerson.
To your point, though, like Helsley, obviously you're not going to option him, and JoJo has no options. But Libby, Fernandez, King, Leahy, Thompson, Graceffa, I mean, all these guys have options. So, like, I mean, we love John King's become but like if he starts off slow, they don't have to stick with him. They can send him AAA. Like, it's really interesting that they'll and again, these options, again, you use an option year, you don't use an option every single time. So like all these guys can go up, and like you could see like 20 different names in this bullpen throughout the year. And it's just really interesting to think about who are going to be the guys that make a difference. And maybe Graceffa turns into the next Ryan Helsley. Like, nah, well, okay, let's not do that. Like maybe he's like Matthew Liberatore, where it's like, okay, this rotation thing's not working. Oh, wow, he's an impact reliever. Like that's like, you never know what could happen this year with it. And then to people's point, like if the bullpen's strong again, and the rotation, I think it's a little bit better because you got a full year of Andre Palante and Eric Fetty. What were the two strengths last year? The rotation and the bullpen. So it's like they could easily be an 80-something win team again, and if the lineup just starts hitting. So it's like that's why I'm so fascinated by this camp. This isn't the most excited I've been because clearly there's a range of expectations. But it's interesting because there is an upside that I don't think people are always acknowledging. But there is a floor where none of this works, and it goes terribly. So
I don't know if it's terribly. Just bad.
I mean, they could win like 74 games. Like that's in the range of outcomes.
But not
which is terrible in St. Louis.
I see people talking about 100 losses. I'm like,
I bet a lot of money that they're not going to lose 100 games this year. But I think they're much closer to an 80-win team than a 100-loss team. But that's just me. So. What storyline I'm looking at, I feel like I got to say the elephant in the room. What the heck's going to happen with Nolan Arenado? So, like, does something happen in the next day or two before camp starts? If not, does he get traded in camp? What on earth does day one of media look like when you've got Nolan there? And like, what does Mo say? What does Nolan? We haven't heard from Nolan all offseason publicly. So, like, what do we hear from Nolan besides his Dodger Blue Instagram posts and stuff? Like, what's Nolan say? What's the vibes like? I do think Nolan's going to handle it professionally, but at the same time, it's like a really weird situation to have going on. And like, does it throw off camp? Especially if Alex Bregman's still not signed, then theoretically this will still be up in the air because it's like the Red Sox could do something. The Astros, maybe he opens up to them again. Maybe they're interested again. Does the Dodgers jump in and make it over the top? The Yankees, like, there's just I'm a little bit worried. I know we've had debated this in private chats, like whether or not they need to get rid of Nato. I'm worried about you. It's hard for you to just fully commit to this direction with the Nato stuff lingering. And even if he's a pretty good player, like I'm not going to argue. I think could be a 3-4 win player this year, and that's valuable. But it's not like that's not a hill I have to die on as a Cardinal That's the Cardinals front office. Is that if he goes on to do that for someone else, good for them. That's valuable, but that's not necessarily helping our long-term goals here. I know you have to pay down some of the contract, but like freeing up that money for Chaim Bloom in the future, I think matters. I'm worried about this. Like they need to hit the ground running, going in a direction in camp, and I'm afraid it's going to feel so like walking on eggshells with it. 2 feet in 2 different lanes, or 1 foot in 2 lanes. Like it could just get messy. So I'm very interested to see how this plays out.
That's fair.
I think some of the like young players that winter warm up were like fairly like some of the guys. I think Mason Wynn was like, I hope he doesn't get traded, and I don't know if like I don't know. He said he wanted to improve his like demeanor in the clubhouse and improve some of the things that he was pouring into some of the young guys. I thought it was funny that there was like a Red Sox podcast that said something along the lines of Arenado could be a good leader or something. I was like, okay, no, I don't think that's going to happen. But
Bulldog can learn new tricks.
Maybe. I don't know. Albert Pujols was better in his age 42 season than he was in 10 years with the Angels. So I don't know. It's possible. But yeah, I don't think any of the players like dislike him, because it seems like a lot of the guys that winter warm up like brought up that they didn't really want to see him go, even though like no one really asked them about that. And maybe that's weird with Ollie. Maybe his relationship with Ollie is weird, but it also seemed like Mo made it pretty clear that Arenado didn't like ask out of the team, and the team just kind of wants him gone. which could be weird, but I don't think it's going to be as big a deal as people think. So.
Yeah, we'll see. But at the same time, like, what's Mason Wynn going to do at winter warm-up? Be like, I don't want Nato here. Like, he's not going to say that.
I mean,
he doesn't have to talk.
Or he just didn't have to bring it up.
Yeah,
I mean, we didn't ask him about that.
I'm pretty confident people ask pretty much every young player about this situation about Nato. I can't really remember a guy actively bringing it up on their own. But
well, I mean, I think someone was just asking him like some of the like veteran players, and then I'll have to go back and rewatch.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's not necessarily telling the truth, but I'm also not going to be like, oh, Mason said he wants him to stay, so clearly all the young players want him to stay. I'm not going to be like, I mean, I guess he could have said something like that, but that would have been kind of wild for Mason Wynn to be like, yeah, I want the third baseman gone. Imagine how awkward that would have been getting back to camp, you know?
Just
so
do me a favor and tinfoil with me for just a second. Put on your tinfoil hats, okay? Hear me out. If you're the Dodgers, right, why would you trade for Nolan Arenado early in the offseason? It's not like he wasn't going to be available, you know?
That's true.
And they saw that there was no traction for him, right? If you want Nolan Arenado, you may have had to actually give something up. You may have like taken on all the money if you traded for him in November or December or January. Now it's February and the Cardinals still haven't traded him. And you know the Cardinals really want to trade him. They've lost all leverage in the situation. It feels to me like if a deal was possible, the Cardinals would make it right now, right? Like,
oh yeah,
they would pay down significant portions of the contract and ask for a player to be named later, cash considerations, right? So just tinfoil with me for a little longer here. If you're the Dodgers, like why would you have made the move before now? If you're going to make the move, it's now or it's in camp. Obviously, you don't want to wait into the season because that could impact his performance. We've seen that with other players before, but it's not like it's Michael Conforto and he's not on a team at that point in time. You know, it's not like the Jordan Montgomery thing where he doesn't have a program to work out. Like Arenado's been on a team, he's had access to a training staff. Like it's not like he's not getting those things. So I'm just saying, if Nolan Arenado was ever going to get traded to the Dodgers, especially, or to another one of those teams that tends to do things the smart way, I would wait till now too. I would have waited it out. I would let the Cardinals get worried, get a little antsy that they're not going to move him, and then you strike during spring training. And I still think there's a decent chance he gets moved because of that. That just would make a lot of sense to me. And the notification, Arenado to LA for, player to be named later, going to hurt really bad to read because it's going to piss me off. But like, seriously, his value has gone down significantly. Cardinals probably would have gotten something good back in the Houston deal. So I really wish he wouldn't have said no to that because now he's either on the team or you're getting absolutely nothing for him at this point.
So why did the Dodgers want him? Why did they sign like Hai-Sung Kim and all those?
There have been whispers over the last few days.
Yeah, but that's just
on Twitter.
That comes from one specific writer who,
Yeah.
It also like.
I think it makes sense for the Dodgers to add Nolan Arenado.
I mean, because in Sandy's scenario here, we're talking about the Cardinals paying down a crap ton of his salary, so he's really not expensive at all. So you're taking a
where's Max Muncy going to play?
Second base, probably. And I know they've got Kim
going to play.
Okay, but he's also like a $5 million, $6 million contract. Like, when does that ever stop the Dodgers from upgrading? Like, and again, like even Michael Conforto, like I don't think they're going to be afraid to bench him if they have to. Like I don't necessarily think I'd put my money on the Dodgers right now. But to Sandy's point, like at this point, I feel like it feels more realistic than it has all offseason because
absolutely it does.
If the Cardinals are backed into a corner, that's what smart front offices do when they're like, oh, we can get this guy on a extreme bargain. Why wouldn't we do this?
Well,
we have the flexibility to do it.
Dodgers could easily flip one of those guys too. Like if you could get Nolan Arenado and then flip Kim for market value, like why not? Like I would do that.
I'm not necessarily going to bet on it, but I think you're right, Sandy. Of like, the Dodgers are one of the most creative teams. Like they will do, they like the Cardinals are like, oh, we have 3 second basemen. Why would we add an amazing one when we have 3 average ones? It's like the Dodgers are like, oh, we can upgrade. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and it's not like they don't have the funds to do it. Like they're going to be farther, like the Dodgers and the highest luxury tax threshold. That gap is larger than some.
Do you know what their estimated payroll is right now?
400 million, right?
Close. It's 377.
But is that with all arbitration and pre-arb salaries factored?
I will not official arb numbers yet. Oh my gosh, their guaranteed commitments list is so long. It's insane.
No, their official payroll will eclipse 400 million this year, and that's not even including whatever prorated salaries they take on at the deadline. They could easily jump up to like 410.
I bet they probably do. Okay, let's keep going. Andrew, you have another storyline that you're looking at as camp starts?
I'm looking at what happens in center field.
Yeah.
Man, the amount of Michael Siani is a great player at winter warm up got me a little bit worried, and I was like, why? He's a great defender, and that's it. Like, he doesn't have anything else. He's a complete black hole at the plate, and Victor Scott deserves a chance. Lars Nootbaar deserves a chance in center field. If there is going to be a position battle on the hitting side, it should be in center field. I feel like all the other positions are, for the most part, taken care of. And I just want to see what opportunities they give to Scott and Nootbaar, and hey, maybe some other guys like Koperniak or anybody else. Just not Michael Siani, please. I don't know. This is like the irrational hate that Sandy had for Michael Siani, except now it's like he's just not good, right? Like, can he win a Gold Glove in center field? Maybe, but you just can't afford that in the lineup where you have Gorman and Walker as unproven, for the most part, talents that you want to see pan out. And if one of those two doesn't hit, then you can't really afford to have another center fielder who is just terrible at the plate.
Yeah, I mean, I want to say Siani's a bad player. He's just not.
No, he's not a bad player. He's just not like what this team needs, especially if they're going to give as many chances to Pedro Pages.
Yeah, I think that mixed with the fact that the lineup has underperformed the last year and a half, actually since the second half of 2023, it really fell off. Remember, we were having those conversations about they were top 7 offense in all baseball prior to the 2023 trade deadline, and that's when Brendan Donovan was like on a heater, and then Donnie hits the IL, they sell at the deadline, they tank it, and we're like, okay, they'll be better in 2024, right? And then it's like, no, they came back and the veterans are bad and the unbats were bad. So if the bats bounce back, you can afford to have 1, maybe 2 bats like that in your lineup, but right now you can't. He's the perfect fourth outfielder, like Redbird Farmhands. Yeah, you're right. He is. You love that defense, but I mean, I want to see him run with. Well, if Scott's ready, if Scott shows something in camp, then go for it. But right now, Nootbaar seems like the guy to me, especially because you can get, so if Donato's there, that's how you get Burleson in the lineup. If Donato's not there, that's how you get JC in the lineup. So, and also like if Pedro and Ivan are probably going to split 50-50, so that's like 81 games to the two of them, or what is it, 80, right? That's 81 games to each of them.
Yeah.
Then that, like, you're probably going to want Ivan to play 120 games. That's 40 games at DH for him. So that's taking away from whoever your primary. It's like it gets complicated quick. The at-bats start to zip out, and so that's why I don't think you can afford Michael Siani in center. And if the Nootbaar experience or Victor Scott experience goes bad, you can always turn back to him, right? But Sandy, how do you expect that to go?
I really don't know. I don't know what they're going to do. I think it should be said that the people that say, oh, it's got to be Scott instead of Siani. Well, when Scott got a chance last year, because he did get the first shot last year, he was not ready. Really, offensively, it was worse than Siani.
Well, he got the first shot after Dylan Carlson.
Sure, yeah.
And wait, who else went down?
Well, it was Carlson. Edmund didn't play.
Oh, yeah, Edmund never even played.
Went down. Yeah. They traded O'Neill, which I guess technically meant that's like coming into 2024, like calendar year, Carlson would have been 4th in line, which would have made Scott 5th in line, which would have made Siani 6th in line.
Yeah.
Already down to option
Sinisi 6th in line.
Option F by early May. So that kind of shows you how the season went. But I just think like there's a chance that Scott's not ready again this year offensively. There's a chance that like we obviously think Scott has a really high floor because of the speed and the defensive tools. But if the bat doesn't get there, that does become a player that's similar to Siani, just a better base runner. And so you do have to worry about that a little bit. I think it will get there, and I hope he's ready. But it's not like if Scott's not the opening day center fielder, the Cardinals are wrong, because maybe he's still not a major league hitter. So we have to monitor that and be fair there. The other thing is I would love it to be Nootbaar, and I think it should be Nootbaar. But I do worry about his durability, and it's perfectly valid for the Cardinals to say no. He's gotten his chance to play center field, and he can't stay healthy in center. And frankly, he can't stay healthy anywhere. Not like it's his fault, but they need his bat in the lineup. If you're going to win ever, like Nootbaar has to be playing every day. You need Nootbaar to play 140 games this year. You can't take 2 2-month injury list stints. That would be awful. So I'm not really sure how it's going to go. I do think Siani's going to end up being the primary center fielder for at least a large portion of the year. Not a fan of that move, but I think it's the direction they're going to go.
All right. Speaking of Sandy, do you have another storyline you've got?
I feel like most might have been taken, but a good one for me is the Cardinals not making a move and how it's going to impact them. So the Cardinals, I'm not just talking about not trading away Arenado, not moving on from some of their pitchers, but the Cardinals did, like riders around, teased some small additions. Yeah. Maybe another center fielder, which right now, like if Randal Grichuk was on the team, that would be really good for the Cardinals right now. It's not like you couldn't afford to have his spot on the roster. And it'd be really nice to have a center field option who crushes lefties. That'd make it a lot easier to stomach having Siani out there a lot of the time. Or it could mean that you could dump Siani and it could be Grichuk and Scott. I prefer that a lot. Another thing is the bullpen. Yes, it's nice that the Cardinals have a lot of open room in their bullpen, but there's no reason they couldn't have added an interesting reliever for less. I think there were guys available this offseason that could have gotten that done for them. I'm not talking about a multi-year commitment like Brett Cecil or Andrew Miller, but maybe assigning more along the lines of something between $5 and $8 million, like the Middleton signing, which we were excited about before his injury. I think Middleton last year would have made the bullpen even better. He was a really intriguing arm. Loved seeing the Cardinals pick him up. They haven't done any of that. It'd be really nice to see them adding around the fringes. And it's one of those things, again, where if they're not going to do that, but they're also not going to make the trades they need to make to reset, pick a lane here, So the Cardinals not making either of those moves, I think will bite them in the butt at some point, whether it's early in the season or later on when you need some more innings out of guys in your bullpen and there's nobody there, or when you're still playing Siani and you're 2 games back in the Central in July, like that kind of stinks if you don't have a guy that can mash lefties that can also play center field. Grichuk was on the market for 3 months. They could have easily signed him. So stuff like that, I think they needed to make another move. At least one of those needed to be done. They didn't get either one done. Another failure this offseason.
Yeah. I mean, even with that too, it's like you sign like Grichuk before he went to the Diamondbacks. If he's a guy you get, it's like he mashes throughout the season. You sell at the deadline, you've got a piece to sell. Or same with the bullpen arms. Or even like if they had traded Fedde and signed Gibson, then you could have maybe traded Gibson at the deadline too. And it's like, well, now you just added prospects in the offseason and the deadline. Now you're just kind of fingers crossed at some point you can do that with Fedde, or even if they do trade Fedde or all these other guys, or it's like you add David Robertson and it's like, well, at the deadline, some team wants a high leverage reliever. You can trust in him. Exactly. And if he doesn't work out, it's 1 year money. Who cares? So,
and look at how sometimes those work so well. Like throwback to the Royals signing Aroldis Chapman and trading him for Cole Reagans. Like you're not always going to pull Cole Reagans. Okay. Yep. But like another shot at the lottery is always helpful for a team like this. And even if it's small stuff, like anytime you get surplus, you're winning. The Cardinals being able to trade Edmundo Sosa for Jojo Romero, that was surplus. That was a win. The Cardinals being able to trade Paul DeJong for Matt Swanson, that's surplus right there. That's great. That's free value. And now Swanson's going to be able to contribute to your bullpen this year. And you gave up bad old Paul DeJong for him. Like that's amazing. The chance for the Cardinals to do that, to convert small amounts of money into lottery ticket prospects at the deadline and not take that opportunity, it is absolutely crazy to not do that. Get yourself some more dart throws. You should always be looking for those.
For sure. Well, I'll jump into my next storyline. It's kind of related to what Uncle Ted's putting in the chat, but I'll specifically hone in on his portion of it. I mean, looking at the unbats, right, coming into camp, like in some ways, the young pitching is a storyline this year, but it's probably more so going to develop in 2026 when most of them get their real runway with things, at least how the Cardinals have it situated right now. Second half, you can see more of the unarms, I think. But this is the year of the unbats, right? It's Jordan Walker, it's Nolan Gorman, it's Lars Nootbaar, it's Brendan Donovan, it's Thomas Ajayci, hopefully at some point, Mason Wynn, Victor Scott, Burleson, Herrera, Pages, like all these guys are going to have the opportunity to sink or swim. And I do think it's really interesting how the Cardinals have built roster construction over time with their farm system with some of these young bats. It's like, I mean, we're just talking in the chat right now, like left-handed bats win the day. And the Cardinals have Gorm, Donnie, New, Burley. In the future, they have JJ, Chase Davis, Jimmy Crooks, VS2s in that mix. Like they have the right profiles building. They have a guy like Nootbaar who, under the surface, all the things say this guy is he's produced like a really good player when he's healthy, but he's not healthy enough. We get that. And he's also shown things he could be even better than that. Am I saying he's going to be a 130, 140 WRC plus guy? No, I'm not. But like, I'm fully confident he's a 120 guy when he's healthy full time. Like, can he do that this year? That'd be huge for this offense. he would have been the second or third best hitter on the Cardinals that last year if he does something like that. Like talking like uplift to your lineup. Like if we in the offseason, if a contender is like, hey, we're going to add someone who's going to be your second best bat now, that's a huge upgrade. So like, can Newt do that? Can Herrera play 80 games at the pace that he was doing? Can Contreras go from 80 games to 150 games of elite production? Now that's an older bat, but still. Can Jordan Walker go back to, remember he was a 115, 116 OPS plus WRC plus guy his rookie year, dropped off completely this past year. Does he rebound? Does Nolan Gorman rebound? Like, I'm not telling you any of these guys for sure will. Does Brendan Donovan get back to being that 128 WRC plus guy rather than he was like 114, 115 this past year? There's ingredients for this offense to be super interesting this year and moving forward. And Brant Brown's in the mix now. I mean, this is what I'm looking at all year. Like the most important Cardinals to me are the young bats. And I think Jordan Walker is being like the more I've thought about it, the more I think he's being unfairly looped into a category of like, this is a make or break year. I think it's more like next year would be. I kind of doubt he's bad enough. Like I don't really see a world where they give up on him this year. I see a world where he turns into like, dude, you got to prove it early in 2026 or you're done. But I don't really see a world where they're like, oh, we're going to go sign Jock Peterson to replace his spot on the roster. It's like, I think you're kind of riding the Jordan Walker bandwagon. Gorman, I could see it ending after this year. Donovan, I don't think they move on from, but is he a pretty good player or is he a great player? Nootbaar, is he a pretty good player or a great player or a good player? Who knows? Is Ivan Herrera your everyday catcher? Or is he a future first baseman? Is he a future DH? Is he a trade chip? I don't know. We got to find out. And I haven't even said Mason Wynn yet. And he was the most exciting young Cardinal last year. But is he a league average bat with elite defense? Because so that's an awesome dude. Or does he get even better than that and turn into a higher equation? Again, I'm not here to tell you all the good things are going to happen or all the bad things are going to happen. But the fact that I can name like 10 different players right now that I could see being one of the most impactful Cardinals this year or falling off the cliff, it's such an interesting storyline. So which Cardinals rise to the occasion, which ones don't? We know that odds are a few of them aren't going to perform this year. A few of them might be injured. But I kind of doubt we run into a 2024 again where they all seem to fall off, right? It's like really Burleson's first half and Mason Wynn's year, like the only, and then Herrera's small sample size are the only really, it's super encouraging. Like Donnie and Newt took slight steps back. Gorman Walker took huge steps back. Sajacy, again, didn't really factor much. Victor Scott was just not ready at the plate. Is this year different? And then looking down the minor leagues, what does JJ Weatherholt look like this year? Does he look like a superstar or star in the making? What does Chase Davis and Jimmy Crooks look like? There's just a lot of potential there. And there's a world where this all goes bad. There's also a world where all the ways people talk about the Reds the past few years, where it's like, oh, all these young position players. I think the Cardinals could be similar to that and viewed around the league. Or they could also be looked at as, wow, there is a real long rebuild ahead of these guys because even their current young guys can't make it. So I honestly know we're bringing it up sixth here, but to me, it's storyline number one right now.
Yeah. I think the Cardinals are even in a really similar position to like the second half 2023 Cubs, where you're looking down the farm system. And at that point in time, especially early in 2023, there really weren't a lot of like top prospects. But there were a bunch of guys with a lot of tools and a lot of potential. And all those guys broke out. And now you look at the Cubs and they have one of the best farm systems in the league because basically everybody hit their 80th, 90th percentile outcomes. And you look at these guys that jumped up lists. You know, Cade Horton suddenly became the next big thing as a pitcher. Like Matt Shaw jumping from off lists to being a top 50 prospect at third base.
Yeah.
You know, there were a bunch of guys that just flew up. And now the Cubs have a wealth of options and a lot of guys to go to. And we could be talking about the Cardinals next year in 2026 as a team where the same thing happened. You know, it's like a Travis Honeyman breaks out or a Chase Davis realized the potential he had when he was drafted, hits 38 bombs in the minors this year and enters camp next year as, you know, the 65th ranked prospect in baseball. Like it's possible that these things happen. Some of the pitchers too, like Cooper Jerpy finally gets the attention he deserves. Yep. Dakota Roby proves why he used to be on those lists. So there's plenty of opportunities for these guys to all jump up these lists, but you never know. And they might all hit their 30th percentile outcomes. And we're talking about Jerpy as a fifth starter and Roby as a bullpen arm.
Yeah. I mean, and you also think too, like, Brant Brown's success that he had lifting up a Miami Marlins offense that wasn't supposed to be any good, his experience at the Dodgers. Now you also can look at how Seattle went and it's like, how much of that was him? How much was that the roster? But then you also look at Chaim Bloom and what he's done with hitting development in Boston, and you have guys like Christian Campbell go from not even a top 30 prospect in baseball last year to the top 10 prospect, or sorry, not a top 30 prospect in the Red Sox system.
Yeah.
Now a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. You have Marcelo Mayer and Kyle Teal, who are first round picks that panned out. Like they were good bats. I mean, well, panned out as prospects. They look intriguing.
Yeah.
Roman Anthony is on a more prospect in baseball. Again, some of that stuff is the Craig Breslow stuff, but a lot of it also is stuff that whom Bloom started. It's like, okay, so Bloom started with Boston with basically the 30th ranked farm system in all of baseball. It was awful. He's got a mid farm system right now. Like most of the people have a rank between 15 and 18 right now. So he's got more to work with. He's got young bats at the major league level. So can he work some of that magic with Nolan Gorman, Lars Nootbaar, those guys? And can he maximize JJ Weatherholt, Chase Davis, Jimmy Crooks, Leonardo Bernal? There's some really interesting DSL guys right now the Cardinals have, and it's always easy to get hyped on those guys, and they might not work out, but could Padilla or Rodriguez end up being really big bats? To your point, Sandy, like, does a Travis Honeyman pop off or Nathan Church? Like,
yeah,
we'll
they're
see
guys. Like any one of them could be the lottery ticket the Cardinals have been looking for.
For sure. So that's what I'm looking at this year. It's a year about development. I know the Cardinals unfortunately haven't fully done that at the major league roster like they should have, but in the front office side of things, I've been very encouraged by the moves they've made. And so I could see some things. So any other storylines you guys want to throw out as we're just going out on the way out here?
I mean, I just want to add that maybe they will sign somebody during camp. Like there's guys that sign during camp. The Cardinals typically don't do that. I feel like
that's my thing.
Like Greg Holland was one of them.
Yeah,
I can't think of another one. It was horrible.
Brandon Crawford.
I guess yeah. I mean, I guess they did sign like Albert Pujols during camp, but I think that was just because of the lockout and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
I think
I wouldn't expect anything big. Like, is there even anyone big to sign other than Bregman? And they're not going to sign Bregman because that doesn't make sense.
No, but there are like middle moves that they could make. Like they could add an interesting reliever. Yeah. I don't know who's still available, frankly.
Lance Lynn.
A lot of guys are gone. Not Lance Lynn, please. But there are options out there, and there were good options early in the offseason, especially like Randall Grichuk before he signed with the Diamondbacks again, to fill in center field. But I think one more thing that's interesting is fan involvement and what that looks like this year. I'm anxious to see how people respond to the Cardinals. Last year, it was really frustrating because I felt like I would talk to people about the team in late June and early July when they were holding down the first wild card spot, for a couple of weeks there. And they were playing like one of the best teams in the league over a 50-game stretch. And it still felt like the general atmosphere in St. Louis was the Cardinals stink. And I couldn't understand why. And maybe they're right. Like maybe that was just luck and the team fell off. I think they just ran out of gas. And some stuff didn't go their way. The offense really never got around, and the bullpen finally wasn't perfect. But, I'm interested to see what it looks like this year, because I think if the Cardinals are mid again next year, you are going to have a lot of people that are still like, oh, I'm not giving this team a dime. And maybe they get to do whatever they want with their pocketbook. Like that's their choice.
That's fair.
It's fair. But I want fans to be honest with themselves about how the team is and realize, hey, the Cardinals aren't losing 100 games, and they might very well be in it. And I think they're still an organization and a team worth supporting. So I'm very hopeful that there will be more fans at the ballpark, especially if we're in it. The last thing I want to see is the Cardinals playing a meaningful game in September with 20,000 fans at the ballpark. Like that stinks. That's the type of stuff the Mariners do. Don't be the Mariners, okay? Be the St. Louis Cardinals. We're the best fans.
Just go Newt News on SeatGeek.
We're the best fans in baseball. Like we got to prove it.
We'll have to plug that SeatGeek code here soon. But I also think, like, and I don't blame fans, like, if they're in it and it's like, they can maybe sneak in as a third wild card, and it's like they're still being highlighted by Michaelis and Fetty and the, like, kind of veteran core. It's like, okay, like, it's just not the most exciting thing in the world. But, like, if it's September and you're seeing the young like Walker and Gorman are slugging, and Quinn Matthews and Tink Hence are up now, and it's like Mason Wynn is capitalizing. Like, I think that could be the draw, is that they really have to let the young guys flourish. And I think people will want to come watch Quinn Matthews pitch. Like, I think people will want to see Tink Hence. I think people are going to want to watch Jordan Walker if he's on a heater and stuff. Maybe not to the tune of a packed house, but I think more than what the 20K is. I don't know if Miles Michaelis on a Wednesday when they're in the heat of it in September is going to do it for people, even Fetty.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I'm hopeful, right? I want the Cardinals to do well, right? So, and also I keep seeing Cooper Jerpy's name in the chat. Like I'm so intrigued by him in camp. I think he could be a fast riser. So, and it's not just because Birds on the Farm. We've been talking about him for a while. Like, go check out the interview with Sandy and Kareem because it was great. But Jerpy's really interesting. So, anyways, appreciate you all watching as always. Again, we might have an emergency pod if a certain third baseman from how did Jim Edmonds describe him? Certain third baseman
like
from
Southern California or something.
Yeah, he said the exact city and I couldn't remember, but from Southern California gets traded, then we'll be back. Otherwise, you'll see us when spring training starts here. We'll be back probably Wednesday or Thursday, but spring training starts Tuesday. So appreciate the support as always. Remember, go check out 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. Use our code CARDS on Underdog if you want to get in on the Super Bowl action tonight. We appreciate you all. Like and subscribe, share, helps the channel a ton. Rate the podcast on audio. And we'll see you guys when spring training starts or no, not a draft.